Okay, so before I start this video, I want to give a proper shout out to Australia as well as Mexico for helping to send some of their firefighters over to British Columbia to help with our wildfires. We're now into August, and it's peak season when it comes to wildfire season. And you can see in British Columbia, it's starting to get really red. And even some of their smoke from the United States is coming up north. Are we complaining? No, it's not who we are as Canadians. But this shout out isn't about the dysfunctional neighbors to the south. It's a shout out to Mexico as well as Australia for helping out a friend. And as a Canadian, we will always remember this. And Canada will always be there for Mexico as well as Australia. Alright, let's get back to today's video. Alright, so I want to ask a quick question to anyone viewing this video right now. Does anybody know what an overflight is? No? It's okay. I didn't know what it meant either. The gist of it is basically any flight going over a country but not landing in the country. You can see in the screenshot right here. You can see a flight here going from JFK, New York to Tokyo, Haneda. And in order to get there, it's got to fly over Canada. And in the next screenshot here, we have another flight from LAX Los Angeles going to Barcelona. And again, in order to get there, it's got to fly over Canada. These overflights are a very important part to the aviation industry. I mean, you can't really expect to not fly over another country if you're going somewhere. Canada played an integral role when it came to all the planes grounding during 9/11. You can see in this animation right here. Well, you can kind of see, I mean, the top left and top right corners. The flights that were coming in internationally that were supposed to go to the United States, they all landed in Canada because they were probably already in Canada, or that was the only place they could land. Now, you might be asking, hey GTL, why is this actually important to your channel? Well, given that what we're going through with our dysfunctional neighbor to the south, and if shit really hits the fan between our two countries, this is potential leverage that we have against the United States. And to help me to explain this to the community, we actually have two community members. We have Professor Wayne Smith from the Toronto Metropolitan University. If you're a follower of my channel, you recognize him. And we also have YUL Spotter, who has been a supporter of my channel since the beginning. You might recognize the name YUL Spotter because I do mention him quite frequently, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to aviation, and he's also provided a lot of professional photos when it comes to our Canadian airlines and planes. So today's video is going to be a community-driven video, and I'm going to hand over the mic to Wayne as well as YUL Spotter.
Thanks, GTL. It's nice of you to introduce us, but one of the cool things about this is we have a great community around the GTL community. And we whether we on the Discord, whether on the other places, we're chatting all the time to one another and building community around it. One of the really cool people I've gotten to meet this is YUL Spotter. We both have an interest in airlines. We both have that sort of nerdy side to us that we both enjoy. And this is a really important part. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about something you've probably never even thought about or never even considered. And this is something called overflights. So I figured we would have a small chat here and talk about what overflights are, what does it have to do with Nav Canada, and how does it play into the tourism realm. So we'll talk about that for the next few minutes. But first of all, I just wanted to start. YUL Spotter, did you want to sort of introduce yourself a little bit and then tell us what overflights are?
Yeah, and I'm pleased to do this collaboration with you, Professor Wayne Smith, and of course GTL. I've gotten to know quite well on the channel. I discovered his channel, and I've been a loyal follower and contributor for a lot of my pictures, which you guys have probably seen that he's used from airlines, because I am, like Mr. Wayne Smith said, a bit of a nav geek. You could probably see some of my collection of airplanes behind me. Yeah, so it's a pleasure to do this community thing to help our friend GTL out with his channel.
All right. Can you tell, what is an overflight? How would you describe it to someone who has maybe never even heard the term before?
So an overflight would be when an airline or even an aircraft flies over a territory which is usually bounded by a country's airspace, and it is not landing within that country, but it needs to go over that country in order to reach its destination. So it is leaving from somewhere outside of that country, let's say Canada, and then it has to go over Canada or through Canada in order to reach its final destination.
Yeah, so as we all know, the world is round, or at least most of us know the world around. There's some people who don't, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
But the easiest way to fly from, for example, Chicago to London is to go over the poles, or Chicago to, Beijing is to fly over the poles, and it's the shortest route, is the most air efficient route because of the way the air patterns go and whatnot like that. So you'll see a lot of flights that start somewhere else and then don't even land in Canada. So, but they fly over Canada as a result. So, can you tell us a little bit about sort of, well, how is this done? Like, what do we have to do with these overflights?
So, so there's Nav Canada, which is responsible for all navigation within Canada, not just air, sea as well, and land. Um, and they have different regions that they're responsible for in Canada, and those are divided up into several areas. So I'll kind of give a sharing right now as to what that's going to look like. So these are the areas that are divided within Canada, and each zone is controlled by a specific area of Nav Canada, where you have controllers that are responsible for monitoring these overflights and are also responsible for giving them clearance. So pilots will have to call once they reach one of these zones onto a specific frequency on their radio in order to ask for clearance to cross through. And usually that's already planned in a flight plan. So you could see it's a vast region, how big Canada really is, because it includes all the way to the North Pole. So there are different areas. Example, in Quebec, I know for a fact that we have an area called Mirabel Center that is located in the Montreal area, and they control all of the region that you see around Quebec. There are different other regions that control all of the other areas. So just looking at this, like Professor Wayne-Smith said, if you're going to come from Asia or somewhere south from the US to Asia, you're going to be flying through Canadian airspace all the way to the North Pole. It will be controlled by Canada.
Yeah, and just to give you a sense that in January of this year, there was over 31,000 overflights that occurred. So when we look at, for example, in June, there was close to 40,000 flights. So over 1,000 flights a day, overflights a day happen in Canada, and they charge basically by the weight and some other fees. But Nav Canada does it as basically a cost recovery. So this is not something Canada is profiting off of, but it's a service, and it's a really important service from a geopolitical perspective because most places can't fly over Russia. So if you want to fly over the poles, you basically have to fly over Canada at some point. So it is not just for the US, but for the world. This is a place that's a really important airspace that needs to be managed for the entire globe and the entire aviation airlines industry. Can you talk to us a little bit about, how important it is to have these overflights? Why do we have the system in place? And how does it increase safety? How does it increase sort of viability?
So the overflights are critical for the airlines because the biggest cost for any airline is fuel. I mean, especially now, thanks to Diaper Don's war in Iran, the fuel cost generally represent more than 50% of the total cost of operating a flight. So
Now, just a heads up, I'm not really too sure what's going on with YUL Spotter's camera, but it does phase in and out when it comes to focusing. So I'm not really sure what happened, but just a heads up.
for example, if you take a big airliner like a 777, Boeing 777, that could seat probably about 300 passengers. You'll have to maybe fill that plane with half of the passengers for it to even maybe start breaking even. But then you haven't even included yet all of the fees for the pilots, for the flight crew, all of the food that you have to have on board. So it's a huge part, the fuel. So they want the shortest route to get from point A to point B. And that shortest route, if you're going to go to Europe, if you're going to go to Asia, is over Canada. So it's critical for the airlines. And in terms of a safety perspective, there are highways in the sky that are kind of invisible. And these are dedicated highways and they can easily track aircraft, and they keep a good separation from distance between each other, and as well as a vertical separation between aircraft that might be below or above. So, and one of the things that people may not know is that in terms of European flights, is during the daytime, so daytime for us, all of the flights are coming from Europe into North America. In the evening and at night, all of the flights are going from North America into Europe. All of the flights coming into North America all fly at an altitude, cruising altitude, that is an even number. So 30,000, 32,000, 34,000, 36. All of the flights going to Europe or other places, Middle East, for instance, in the evenings, all have flight at an altitude that is an odd number. So 29,000, 31,000, 33,000. So Nav Canada helps to regulate that and make sure that aircraft are flying at the proper assigned altitudes.
And if you think about it, it's pretty incredible. You have all these overflights, but then you also have all the domestic flights. And if you think about this volume of traffic going across a relatively small population that Canada has, it is a lot of business coming across our skies. And then you add in military flights. So, for example, there's a NORAD going on. All these things have to be thought about and managed from a whole airspace. And it's pretty incredible. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this is, what do you think of some of the geopolitics of this? What is something maybe Canadians don't quite understand about what the power in this overflight is and managing these overflights is?
So for this one here, I'll share something else,
Sure.
another that shows you basically how Nav Canada charges for overflights. So here you see a chart, and this is published by Nav Canada, on the different fee structures that they charge for airlines that are overflying Canadian territory. So I won't read them all, but basically it's divided up into three sections. There's a terminal fee, an en route fee, and an oceanic fee. So, and a lot of them, the fee structure is calculated based on aircraft weight. That's probably the most key calculating index that they use for this. And as Professor Wayne Smith was saying earlier, is that Nav Canada is a not-for-profit organization. I think it was founded in 1996, I think, by the Canadian government. So any money that they take in has to go back into investing in the system. So right now, some of the fees are quite low that they charge when we compare them. You'd be surprised at some of the fees, and the fees are charged to the airlines. So in terms of power, we talk about geopolitics. When we have, like Diaper Don threatening, he's not happy about the direction of the wind blowing smoke into the U.S. and what's put tariffs. Well, Canada has a lot of power in terms of its airspace because, as we've been showing, I think like 1,000 flights a day overflying Canadian territory. If you decided to double these fees, that could have a big impact on the American carriers, a very big impact. And in terms of NavCat not being a not-for-profit, well, it's simple for them. The extra money they take in, they can reinvest into the system and make it even safer, even better. So it's a card. I don't want to use the word Trump, but Trump card that we could use against the U.S. as some negotiating leverage that we would have with them.
Exactly. And, for example, if you looked at what happened with Spain, where Spain closed down their airspace to U.S. military, if you reduced capacity in the airspace, that would make a huge difference. So just to give you one more sense, I want to give you one more number because last year there was 421,500 plus overflights. That is a large amount of volume of traffic going over Canadian airspace, and almost all those overflights are going to be probably the vast majority are landing in the U.S. or originating in the U.S. So this is a very important geopolitical component that a lot of people don't know about or don't even think about.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, and I don't think anybody has been aware of this particular aspect, and we're not saying here that it hasn't been thought about. Maybe it's something that they're not talking about. Maybe the Canadian government is holding their cards close to their chest. And yes, I think we do have the cards, despite what some people might say.
Just to wrap up, though, I think one of the things that it's really kind of an interesting conversation that we talk about quite frequently on this channel is this idea that, like you said, there are cards, there's negotiations, there's a whole, but the ability to be a good global partner is a really integral part of being Canada. And when Mark Carney starts talking about being a middle power and getting all these countries to work together, our airspace is a big part of that conversation, and being reliable with our airspace. So when you get a 9/11 and things need to be landed, you're going to have the Canadian government there to do all kinds of work and be of all kinds of assistance in a case like that. And this is what a lot of people don't think about. Yes, it's the safety in the skies, but if something ever happens globally, Canada is in a prime position to be of assistance to the entire world. And I encourage everyone to if you have never seen the one on Gander, the documentary on Gander,
Operation,
and that,
Yellow Ribbon.
yeah, there's a perfect example of how important Canada is in relation to the airline industry. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I just I appreciate the opportunity and also getting to meet the community, because I think GTL did say that he wants this is a community thing, that we're fighting for Canada's sovereignty and future, and it's a community effort. So it's a pleasure to be able to contribute and speak with you, Professor Winsmith.
Thank you so much to YUL Spotter, and it's a pleasure to finally get to meet you sort of in person. We've chatted a bunch of times, but it is a community, and one of the greatest things about what JTL is doing is he's building a community around it. So back to you, GTL.
I want to thank you, Wayne and YUL Spotter, for helping me with this video and bringing to our attention on something that Canada actually has leverage with, which is airspace. I mean, it's something I never thought about until they told me about this topic. Now, I hope it doesn't get to that point, but like I said earlier, if shit really hits the fan, then we can just say, you know what? No US planes flying through Canada. Go figure out your own way there. Now, if you ask me, I don't think it will ever get to that point. I mean, the relationship between Canada and the United States. I mean, there's a reason why Taco Tuesday has not touched any of our energy sectors, or the minerals as well. Notice that there's no tariffs on those. But if you ask me, this is just another thing that the United States is taking Canada for granted for. And as the days, weeks, months go by, we're going to start to find out more things that the United States does rely on Canada for that they may not even think about. So again, I want to thank Professor Wayne Smith as well as YUL Spotter for helping me with this video and bringing this to the attention of the community. And if you do have any questions for Professor Wayne Smith or YUL Spotter, I would suggest joining our Discord server because they're very active in the server as well. Now, I do want to mention something about the community part because Wayne did mention this at the end of his discussion. But I've been thinking about the direction I want to take this channel. And since being demonetized, I really started to see the value in this channel, and it is the community. And one thing I really want to do is get the community more involved. Because I know I've gotten a lot of emails from the community saying that I wish I could speak on your channel, or I wish I could just vent, or talk about this, or talk about that. And today's video was just that, the community speaking. It was Wayne and YUL Spotter talking about a topic that they felt the community needs to hear. So I guess moving forward, I mean, this is an open invitation to anybody in the community that would like to either do a recording, or if you want to jump on a call with myself or even Professor Wayne Smith, reach out to us and we'll try to see if we can arrange something. I mean, it would be good to have the community speak as well, because that way you're not always hearing me. Because sometimes I'm actually sick of hearing my own voice, to be honest. 695 videos and I still can't stand my own voice. So yeah, if anybody has a topic they want to discuss, let me or Wayne know. To close off this video, I would like to thank Albert for sending me this photo from Airlines, Saskatchewan. I hope I pronounced that right. But I thank you for sending this via email and sharing it with the community. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. I hope you got some value out of it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks everyone.